Most great marathon runners are remembered for one perfect day, one race where everything lines up.
The adventure begins in Rio. 155 runners from 80 different nations.
The weather, the course, the pacing, and somehow the body just clicks. But when it comes to Eliud Kipchoge, he'll forever be remembered for something else entirely: predictability.
Eliud Kipchoge, the icon, the champion, is the gold medalist once more. It was never in doubt. What a man, what an achievement.
Year after year, course after course, different weather, different competition. With Kipchoge, the outcome barely changed. He didn't just win marathons, he made the impossible feel predictable. And that's what makes his prime genuinely hard to explain. Because if greatness is supposed to be rare, how did he make it look routine? How did he dominate an event designed to punish inconsistency, then do it again and again? That's what we're unpacking here. Not just the brilliance of his body, but the intelligence of his execution, the mental precision, and the extraordinary level of control that set him apart. What's interesting is that this control didn't show up when everything went right. It showed up when races started to fall apart.
I'm not running on my legs alone. I'm running on my head with my heart and my mind.
Before we can talk about how good Kipchoge really was, we need to be clear about the period we're judging. For Kipchoge, his prime ran from 2016 to 2022. It began with Olympic gold in Rio and ended with another Olympic gold in Tokyo. That's 6 years at the very top of a sport that punishes even small mistakes. In between those Olympics, he dominated the world marathon majors: London, Berlin, Chicago, Tokyo. Not in flashes, not in bursts, but consistently. Different courses, different race dynamics, same level of excellence. Berlin, the fastest course in the world, saw him break world records.
And at last the world record is his. How fitting is this? The Olympic champion is the world record holder.
And he also won on the iconic streets of London. Tokyo brought humidity, narrow roads and tactical racing. Kipchoge won there too.
Eliud Kipchoge, the icon, the champion.
Even his fellow elite competitors couldn't derail him, sometimes with mid-race surges, sometimes by dragging races into chaos. More often than not, Kipchoge adapted calmly, efficiently, and without drama. This isn't about his best race, it's about how rarely he had a bad one. And once you define a prime that way, the scale of what he did becomes very hard to dismiss. Because the real question isn't how fast he could run on his best day, it's why his worst days still looked elite.
This, the greatest performance in the history of marathon running on the male side. This is Eliud Kipchoge in supreme form.
When people talk about marathon greatness, they usually go straight to times. World records, course records, how close someone got to the 2-hour barrier. It feels objective, clean, settled. But marathon times are one of the most misleading ways to judge greatness. They don't tell you how hard the race actually was. They don't tell you about the conditions, the tactics, or how close things came to falling apart. Courses vary massively. Berlin is flat, wide, and built for speed. Chicago's similar. London often turns into a tactical chess match. New York is chaos. Bridges, wind, uneven roads. Each course asks different questions. So is a runner who wins in Berlin really better than someone who's competitive everywhere else? Pacing matters too. Some races are dragged along by perfectly calibrated pacers. Others are messy, full of surges and hesitation. Weather plays its part. Heat, wind, rain, humidity. And so does the depth of the field. Even on the same course, no two marathons are the same. Each one demands slightly different skills. Reduce all of that to a single number and you lose most of the story. Yes, some of the fastest marathons ever happened on perfect days, on fast courses, with everything lined up. But what separates the truly great isn't one fast race, it's fast decades. Sustained excellence across different courses, conditions and race types is far rarer than one extraordinary performance, and that's where people misunderstand Kipchoge. They look for one number that explains him, one race, one record. But times alone don't explain why he kept winning when races became messy, unpredictable or brutal. And that's where it starts to feel uncomfortable, because it points to an advantage numbers can't really capture. This is where Kipchoge really separates himself, not with peak speed, not with one perfect race, but with control. Once you start looking for it, it shows up everywhere. At the elite level, marathon performance usually swings. Even great runners bounce between very good days and very bad ones, miss the pacing slightly, overcommit to a surge, and the marathon doesn't forgive you. Late race collapses are common, even for champions. Kipchoge didn't eliminate those risks, he narrowed them. Look at his prime, race after race, and one thing stands out. His performances stayed inside an unusually tight band. He almost never blew up. He almost never faded badly over the final kilometers.
But it's victory number 5 for Eliud Kipchoge.
When things got chaotic, uneven pacing, sudden surges, bad weather, his output barely changed. The closing miles tell the story. While others slowed sharply, Kipchoge just kept ticking along. Not because it didn't hurt, but because he managed it better than anyone else. Take Berlin 2018.
It's the Olympic champion, is the world record holder.
Yes, it was a world record, but the lesson isn't the headline time, it's how he ran the final 10 kilometers. No panic, no wild push, just controlled, decisive running while everyone else unraveled. Most great runners are dangerous when everything goes right. Kipchoge was dangerous when things went wrong, when races got ugly, messy, unpredictable. That's when his advantage actually grew. Over 6 years, that kind of control mattered more than any single performance, and that's what made his dominance feel so different. He made elite performance predictable. So how was he able to do this? The obvious answer is physiology, and this is usually where the conversation ends, which is a problem. Kipchoge had an incredible engine, elite VO2 max, exceptional running economy, genetics, that clearly helped. On paper, he was built for the marathon. But here's the thing, at the very top, almost everyone is. If physiology were the deciding factor, the results wouldn't look anything like Kipchoge's did. VO2 max values cluster tightly among elites. That surprises a lot of people, but it matters. Differences in running economy are often small. Training volumes, high, yes, but not unusual for Kenyan runners. Long mileage, simple structures, consistency at altitude, that's the norm, not the exception. Kenyan elites regularly log 120 to 140 kilometers a week. So whatever separated Kipchoge, it wasn't simply work ethic or mileage. Kipchoge followed that template. So did plenty of others. Physiology sets the ceiling. But ceilings don't explain consistency. It tells you what might be possible. But it doesn't explain 6 years of control across wildly different courses, weather, and race dynamics. If physiology were enough, there'd be far more Kipchoges. And this is where the explanation really starts to break down. There are lots of runners with similar engines, similar mechanics, similar training. What separates Kipchoge isn't something you can measure in a lab or log in a spreadsheet. It's something that only shows up when the race is on the line. It's something rarer, how he executed when it mattered most. On race day, under pressure, he made the right decisions, over and over again. That's why his dominance felt inevitable. So the advantage had to live somewhere else, and it wasn't something he switched on occasionally, it was something he carried into every race.
Long run actually is crucial for me. It makes my body to conduce itself for running for a long time.
This is where Kipchoge becomes almost surgical. At the elite level, talent gets you to the start line. Execution decides what happens next. Kipchoge's edge wasn't just his legs or his lungs, it was how he behaved under pressure. Every hill, every surge, every moment of discomfort was met with calm, deliberate control. He regulated emotion under fatigue instead of letting it dictate decisions. He practiced risk discipline. He didn't chase every move. He didn't panic when someone surged early. He conserved energy and waited. Pacing patience was everything. Kipchoge let races unfold. He allowed competitors to reveal themselves. And when it was time to commit, he did it decisively.
The acceleration as well from Eliud Kipchoge.
When plans changed, weather shifted, paces dropped, races turned tactical, he didn't unravel. He adapted. In his prime, every race became predictable because he controlled what he could. He didn't race the clock, he raced probability. Every decision minimized variance. Even deep into the race under heavy fatigue, he kept making the right calls. That's why his performances were repeatable. Others needed perfect days. Kipchoge needed discipline. Execution, not talent, is what turned his greatness into something sustainable. And that's why one run, not even a record, might tell us more about his prime than any of his wins.
Eliud Kipchoge. Whoa! On his shoulder. 140, the unofficial.
When people hear 159, they think record, history, peak human performance. That's not the right frame. The Ineos 159 challenge wasn't a race. It was a controlled experiment, a systems test. Everything was managed. The paceline was engineered for efficiency. Nutrition and hydration were optimized. Pacing was modeled, not improvised. Footwear, biomechanics, psychology, every variable was accounted for. And here's the key point. The impressive part wasn't the time. It was how comfortable it looked. Nothing felt frantic. Nothing felt forced. The rhythm never broke. That wasn't peak effort. It was proof of control. The project didn't reveal something new. It confirmed what his prime had already shown. Minimize variance, execute perfectly, and elite performance becomes repeatable. Talent pushes limits once. Control reproduces excellence. The most unsettling part wasn't 159. It was what that run quietly confirmed about everything he'd already been doing for years. It was how easy he made it look.
Eliud Kipchoge storms into the history books in Vienna. 1:59.40, the unofficial time.
Comparing marathon greats is tempting and usually misleading. It's easy to point to one incredible race and crown a champion. But Kipchoge's greatness doesn't live in a single performance. It lives in structure. Other great runners hit higher peaks, unforgettable days when everything clicked. But those peaks were often brief. Even today, some runners are faster on paper, in perfect conditions. They're also far more volatile. Kipchoge represents a different model. You don't beat him by being faster once. You beat him by being consistently great for years. His advantage wasn't spectacle, it was reliability. That's the frame that matters. Not heroics, not highlight reels, not single numbers. For 6 years he was almost impossible to beat, not because he was occasionally brilliant, but because he executed perfectly every time. And that forces a different kind of comparison than we're used to making.
Eliud Kipchoge is the Olympic marathon champion, and he has destroyed the field with brilliant.
Sport loves the perfect moment, the record, the highlight that lives forever. But Kipchoge's prime wasn't built on moments like that. He didn't redefine how fast humans could run once. He redefined how often elite performance could happen. Year after year, race after race, fast courses, tactical races, heat, chaos, it didn't matter. Predictable, consistent, almost surgical. That's why his dominance can't be reduced to physiology or a single time. His edge was control of pace, emotion, decision-making, risk. He turned one of sport's most fragile events into something reliable. And sometimes, control is the most remarkable form of greatness there is. Kipchoge didn't just run marathons, he orchestrated them.